slowly launching. And in the clothes swap, I found that basically there sort of seems to be lots of these sort of redundant tops, like shirts, and sort of slightly kind of mediocre tops with open fronts. And so I'm working on today, the thing that I've got is a new way of sort of combining these redundant pieces and putting two together to make something a little bit better. So I've got, like, this is one that I was half done at the moment, like an old cotton plaid shirt, men's shirt, and then inside I've got this sort of knitted cotton cardigan, and then I'm just basically using like really, really simple embroidery to kind of attach them together, create a bit of teeth around it. And I'm actually making this one specifically for my friend who is a local organic grower who I usually buy from at the farmers market, but we can't go there now. And she's been an absolute lifeline because I've been able to go and pick up from her. So I want to make this for her to say thank you. So that's what I'm doing. And now I'm just going to go through and sort of say your name. So if you one at a time want to tell us who you are, what you've brought to work on, maybe like just one or two of the real highlights of things that you've loved about Revolution Week. So I'm going to start with Barbara.
Oh, hi. So I'm Barbara Guarducci, I'm Italian, and I am a creative director working on design project with a social value. And since a few months, I launched a new project called Mending for Good, actually addressing waste and give a new value to waste and to people behind the product. So working with social projects and reinventing and repurposing excess stock and waste. So I was really happy this week to hear a lot about this and to hear that there is really a new world coming and that this world is actually there already. And we all know that, of course, because we feel part of a community, but it's growing and growing. And this tragedy that we're all, living in is also an opportunity, of course. And it's going to, show us a new world. So I feel very much part of a group of dreamers who are not dreamers anymore, but really getting there and doing amazing things. So what I have here with me, do you want me to say it now or maybe after?
Yeah, go ahead. Show us.
Well, here is my favorite cashmere sweater that actually became a sample, an embroidery sample book for a women group that I work with. So it's actually, these are all inspired by Bangladeshi traditional embroidery. So it was full of holes. So a group of women that I work here in Italy who are women with fragile backgrounds and are trained on embroidery and knitting and crochet. They did this this sample book, this sweater full of holes for a group of Bangladeshi women of the area of Poplar Works in London, where we did a community workshop. So it was amazing to have two groups of women working together. But the holes are growing, so I'm gonna have to have more and more embroideries to be stitched on this sweater that I really love and I bring with me everywhere.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you, Barbara. I love it. Karishma, could you tell us where you are and what you're working on? Make sure you're not on mute.
Yeah, hi. Sorry. And so I came in a bit late, but hi everyone. My name is Karishma, and I'm really excited to be here. And am I supposed to talk about my piece right away?
You can do it in whatever order you want. Just tell us about who you are, what you're working on, and maybe a couple of highlights from the week.
Sure. So I have a brand based in India, and we work extensively with different crafts that we have within India. We work with embroidery, we work with dye, we work a lot also with upcycling, and we try and stick to a zero waste policy, which technically means that we make a lot of things, but we also take all the waste and put that back into products. And we're trying to use that technique and actually work with a lot of other people who also may have stuff to, who are making clothes, but probably don't know what to do with their waste. So we're trying to just, very simply, we just want to put the craft together with, to give it some purpose, because we really feel that that's what the purpose of craft always was. It always was about making things that you needed, about functionality, about community. And we feel like somewhere along the way, every time we refer to craft nowadays, we've kind of lost that because it's always out of context. So we just simply want to put things back in perspective and back in the hands of people who have always been making them. So that's what we do. And the week has been about sharing this idea with as many people as we can. And we're so happy to be a part of Fashion Open Studio. And we're actually missing the fact that it's over and have the test look forward to in the coming week. But and I have this denim jacket that I carry with me everywhere. It actually belongs to my stepdad, and we lost him 2 years ago. But I still have the jacket and I wear it all the time. So I just thought this was a great time to just have this conversation and maybe add some bits and pieces to this to add another memory to it. That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank
Phoebe,
you.
are you there? Would you like to tell us a little bit?
Phoebe?
Yes. Yes, I said Phoebe. Yeah.
Oh, hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for inviting me on to this lovely Stitch and Bitch. And I just wanted to say massive congratulations to everyone that's worked on the Fashion Revolution Week. It's been so amazing to see how you guys have completely thrived in this hugely different environment. So well done to you all. It's come across as so slick and so well organized throughout the whole week. So thank you and congratulations on that. I know it must have been a lot of work. So I'm here. I have my grandmother's very beloved, I'm just going to get it out. I wear a lot of black, as some of you may or may not be aware. I'm wearing monochrome today, and this is my grandmother's darning mushroom, which is one of my most precious possessions. It's quite nice. It's got a lot of scratches on the top of the surface because it's obviously been used quite a lot, and I actually never saw her use it, but I inherited it. My mother gave it to me when she died, and I kind of taught myself how to darn, and now I'm an obsessive darner. And this opportunity, I just moved house when the lockdown began, and we didn't have any internet or any washing machine or anything or a sink. So the first kind of 11 days was spent doing a lot of darning. I had a big backed up pile of things waiting to be darned. So I've been doing that. And then I guess to talk a little bit about what I do, I'm a fashion designer. I've had a small London-based label since 2011. Over the last 2.5 years, we've been trying to develop what we're doing to better place it within the realities of our environmental situation. So in terms of waste production, waste reuse, being more knowledgeable about the sources of the raw materials that we use, re-educating ourselves and re-implementing new systems within our studio and within our greater network. We've also spent a lot of time over the last couple of years trying to share our knowledge with other people. It took us a long time to re-educate ourselves, and I feel that that's a key part of going forwards is to share any knowledge we have with other peers that we, within the network of peers that we're part of here in London. You know, there's no point me changing my working methods. It needs to be things that are happening across the whole industry. So we try and act as a sort of sharing platform as much as we can. Yeah, that's a little bit about me, and there's lots more, but we'll let the next person go.
Brilliant, thanks, Phoebe. Rachel Owen, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, I'm Rachel Owen, and I actually am new to Fashion Revolution, but Emma invited me to this, to the Stitch and Bitch, because I have started a COVID patchwork blanket, and she thought it might be a nice opportunity to meet all you guys and try and recruit some patches for the project. If anyone would like to submit a patch to our project. In terms of Fashion Revolution and what it's sort of brought to me over the week, I mean, I only just started working with Emma, so that's been amazing to find out more from her. And I think it's really coincided. I mean, obviously the COVID crisis is like a horrific tragedy that we're all living through, but it has been, I mean, the way that seamstresses and sort of garment workers have been relied upon to sort of produce extra PPE, and that coinciding with Fashion Revolution, I think it's really sort of mobilized a sort of worker solidarity, which is maybe particularly in London, I think not sort of that associated with the fashion industry in terms of like unionization, and thinking about the possibilities of that going forward as we sort of recover, and kind of unionizing. I mean, for me personally, thinking about my own status as a very unprotected worker, it's been good to sort of put that into the perspective of the whole world. And then also, yeah, it was interesting. I like the additional what the new hashtag what's in my clothes. I do a lot of just on a very, very small scale making my own clothing, and I've been using a lot of recycled denim, and recently started noticing how much very, very cheap sportswear was in charity shops. Lots of like this stuff, basically, lots of like neons that you can even just tell by the way they look, they're not gonna erode. So yeah, so today on the last day of Fashion Revolution, I just put it into action, this thing that I've been meaning to do for a while, and made my own top out of all these recycled sportswear that I have collected in quite a vast quantity from a recycling plant in order to start my own sort of sports label, which is because I think it's interesting in sportswear how it's kind of for the benefit of the wearer and at what exploitation of the makers. So thank you to Fashion Revolution for sort of giving me a bit of a jump start to make the first prototype of that. And yeah, and then back to the quilt. If anyone is interested in submitting a quilt, and we can talk about like a patch for the quilt, and in particular, we've started a GoFundMe with the project, and one of the charities we're donating to is Fashion Revolution, and it would be great. I thought if there was a patch for each charity. We're also donating to the Trussell Trust, which is supplying food banks in the UK, and to Women's Aid, because within the UK there's been a lot of reportage of domestic violence increases during lockdown. So Fashion Revolution, Trussell Trust and Women's Aid are what we have decided to raise money for. And thought it'd be really great if someone from Fashion Revolution would like to make a patch dedicated to Fashion Revolution with the logo, so that within the I'm just starting work on a patch for the Trussell Trust. But yeah, if anyone would like to volunteer to make a patch for Fashion Revolution, so that each of the charities has their own patch within the quilt.
Awesome, absolutely love it. Thank you, Rachel. Next, Salome in Seoul.
Oh, can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Hi. Hi everyone, I'm so glad to be here. So greetings from Lisbon, Portugal. So first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to all of you for making this reality Fashion Revolution Week 2020. So I am from Portugal. I'm the country coordinator of Fashion Revolution in Portugal. I have been working in consumer behavior for the past 10 years, more than 10 years. So here in Fashion Revolution Week, we had an amazing week with a lot of live talks with amazing people, you know, about upcycling, about feminism, about labor exploitation, about lots of stuff. And we also did some tutorials. We shared some tutorials about embroidery, about visual mending, about knitting. And this is my shirt. I don't know if you can see it. So it has like a huge hole in it, if you can see. And this shirt is really special to me because it's my sister's shirt. My sister is from the army. She's a doctor from the army, and she's now I mean, at the hospital with all this, you know, pandemic drama you have seen for the past couple of months. And she just gave me her t-shirt, her shirt from the army, I guess a couple of years ago. And I have been decorating it since then with a lot of patches, you can see. But it has this amazing hole here. I am trying to do some visible mending here with embroidery. So yeah, that's my task for today. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Salome. And Sienna, do you want to go next?
Oh, it's Carrie. It says Sienna, but it's Carrie.
Oh, I'm sorry. It always logs me in as Sienna.
Right.
I hadn't changed it.
Yeah.
Hi. Gosh, well, I'm being overambitious as usual with what I'm trying to do. So I've got a dress which has been sitting in my spare room for ages. Every time it's kind of my Fashion Revolution office, and every time I go in, I just see this dress sitting there, and I thought, finally, I've got a chance to do something. So it's this gorgeous sort of 1950s fabric, but it's like a tulip shape skirt, which looks great on, but I'm a really fast walker, and it really annoys me having something where I can't just like stride out as fast as I normally do. So I thought it'd be a really good job to unpick the sort of the bit at the bottom, so hopefully then I can just make it into a flared skirt at the end of it. And then while I was in the loft getting down a few sewing things, I found an embroidered pillowcase as well with lots of holes in, and another embroidered pillowcase with holes. So I thought I'd try and sew them together because it's just such beautiful embroidery. So I'm going to try and make one good pillowcase out of two not very good pillowcases. So those are my projects, which will probably keep me going for most of this evening and most of tomorrow evening as well. I think it's been an amazing Fashion Revolution week. I mean, it was all a bit sort of unknown what was going to happen as we moved online, and I think it's been really successful in this, you know, doing something digital has just reached so many more people than we could have done otherwise. I mean, like Fashion Question Time, which was, you know, in the Houses of Parliament and then at the Victoria and Albert Museum, and, you know, typically we used to have sort of 80, 100 people at the Houses of Parliament, and then we've been able to get hundreds of people joining in. So that's been really great. I think for me personally, probably, I don't know if I'd call it a highlight, but talking to people about Expedition, the sailing voyage I've just been on. I actually took two of Phoebe's pieces on the journey. They sailed 2,000 miles with me, a lovely silk top and my warm jumper, both of which were very well used and necessary. But I think talking to people this week, I did an X Expedition live with Emily Penn who's the co-founder of X Expedition. I talked with Patrick Duffy, the Global Shapers. And I think for so many people, you know, they've started to realise some of the problems of microplastic pollution, but I think kind of talking about my observations and just that real first-hand experience really brings it home to people. And I think particularly when it comes to chemicals, and so many people in my conversation with Emily Penn were so shocked. I mean, Emily had blood tests for 35 chemicals that were banned by the United Nations, and they found 29 of them in her bloodstream. And these are from, you know, flame retardants, you know, the chemicals that go into your clothing to make it stretchy, that makes it, you know, easy to care for. And I think that's been something that's been, you know, really valuable this week, is so many people actually just starting to realise the huge amount of chemicals that go into the clothes and all the soft furnishings which surround us every day. So that's, yeah, I think that's been I wouldn't call it a highlight, but I think a really significant moment. But I think once we start to realise what's surrounding us in terms of chemicals in our textiles, we can start to act on it.
Brilliant, thanks, Carrie. And Bronwyn, do you want to have a
Hi.
moment?
Yeah, so I'm a part of the Fashion Revolution team as well in the UK, and I am currently mending a sock, which is a little bit boring. But it's like, you know, those pairs of socks where they only go up like just under your ankles so you can wear them with sneakers and it looks like you don't have socks on. It's one of those, and it's the only pair that I have. And it's had a hole in like where the big toe is for like a year, and I always just wear them anyways. So it's a really good project to do so that I don't have to deal with that anymore when I can leave the house again. So that's what I'm working on today. I think for me, Fashion Revolution Week highlight. So just before we had this call, I was watching Emma Slade interview 5 of our country team coordinators from around the world. And that was amazing because, as everyone said, we have been able to kind of see into the kind of global teams a lot better, and kind of everyone watch each other from around the world this year because we're doing things online, and just kind of in an hour instantaneously seeing 5 different countries. We had Germany, South Africa, India, and Nepal, and what was the fourth one? Not sure, can't remember. Even though it was an hour ago, but yeah, just hearing them all back to back in an hour was really, really inspiring to hear what they've been up to. Not even just this week, but a lot of them talked about, you know, their journeys forming country teams and what they've been doing all year round. So that was really great.
Brilliant, thanks, Bronwyn. Bryony, do you want to tell us what you're up to?
Hiya, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I mainly do embroidery and craftivism, and trying to do visible mending, just trying to raise awareness online and talk about all of the issues that Fashion Revolution kind of kick-started talking about. It's been really fun this week to watch everything that's been going on online, and yeah, it's been awesome to watch people getting into mending as well. At the moment, I just have some socks. I've always got a never-ending pile of socks that have holes, so it's a good opportunity to be doing that.
Cool.
Yeah, I suppose that's it really.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. Elisa Lex, are you there?
Thank you.
Hey, yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me. And can I just quickly kind of slightly fangirl a bit? Bryony, I'm a huge, huge fan of your embroideries. Absolutely love everything that you do. So I have a sewing pattern label. I design sewing patterns and I teach women how to make their own clothes. So I'm coming at it not quite from a kind of fashion point of view, but more from a maker point of view. And this, for Fashion Revolution this week, we've kind of, instead of the kind of now famous hashtag who made my clothes, we've been asking our community of makers who made my fabric, because obviously a lot of us as makers, as sewists, we already know, you know, the time, the skill, the effort, everything that goes into making clothes. So we're already, you know, quite well placed in terms of questioning where our clothes came from, but do we actually question where our fabric came from? You know, and obviously it's all the same issues. Where was it grown? Where was it spun? What dyes were used? Were people exploited? So we've been using this week to try and encourage our community of makers to question where their fabrics and where their notions came from, so that they can hopefully start upping, you know, or continue upping the sustainability and, you know, thoughtfulness of their sewing practice, which has been really amazing. And we've had a really, really great response. And I've discovered so many more fabric retailers along the way that are really putting in the hard work to provide home sewers with more sustainable fabric options, which is really amazing. When we started about 10 years ago, there was really very, very little sustainable kind of fabric out there other than what you'd find in secondhand shops. And what I am making today, so I've been feeling really, I'm like an obsessive sewer, and I usually make like, you know, 1 to 2 dresses a week, if not more. But in the kind of 6 weeks since I've been in isolation, I've been so unproductive. I've only made 2. I've completed 1 dress, and I'm almost about to finish another dress. So I decided to not beat myself up and just embrace that. And so what I'm doing is that I'm embroidering the neckline, what will be the neckline of the dress that I've made. So I'm really taking my time, and I'm just doing kind of like folk inspired floral embroidery. And yeah, I find embroidery really calms my mind and just, you know, stills things out. So it's really good for any kind of low-lying anxiety, and every day, just bit by bit. It's like watching a garden grow, you know, you've got every day you've grown a couple more little flowers, and it feels really satisfying. And then at the end of it, I'm going to have a dress with an embroidered neckline that will remind me of this moment in time for as long as I wear it, and hopefully for as long as, you know, people after me wear it as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lisa Lex. Hasna Korda, are you with us?
Hi everyone, I'm Hasna Korda. Thank you very much for having me and inviting me today. I'm super excited. I must say that this setup reminds me of all my sisters when we stay together and embroider or make things. Or I have 6. We are 6 girls in the family, so it's a bit smaller. So I'm the co-founder of Save Your Wardrobe. So we are a digital wardrobe management platform where we help people understand better their consumption, and we help them with recommended services or do-it-yourself things to extend the life of garments. So we are trying to bring awareness on wasteful consumption or wasteful patterns, and give them insights and ways to reduce that waste or to extend the life of their garments. So we do that with in partnership with seamstresses, with eco-friendly dry cleaner, with responsible donation, upcycling, fashion labels, and so on. And the project I'm working on is this upcycled jumper that I got from a Portuguese company. So there is no brand, it's just an upcycled wool jumper. And I've added a kind of coral embroidery, French knot on top of it. So it's I've started it during the last Stitch and Bitch during London Fashion Week, so in February, and actually it's has accompanied me during the lockdown. We decided to go to isolate really quickly. End of February, beginning of March, we thought that this pandemic would take a very global level. So we decided that all the teams in Tunisia and in Lisbon and in London should work from home. So that was a great opportunity for us to slow down as well and focus on crafts. And I feel like, just like Elisa Lex said, it helps calm anxiety, it helps refocus, it helps also ground a little bit when anxiety levels and news are really pessimistic. So a little bit of time out just through embroidery is really helping. And I'm super excited to be here.
Brilliant, thank you. Lily, are you ready?
Yes, hello. I'm Lily Fullup. I'm the author of Wear, Repair, Purpose, just out about a month ago, and it's about learning how to mend and upcycle. And I also run the Instagram account Mindful Mending, which is kind of just a community promoting fashion sustainability, learning to mend, learning to upcycle. I've gone out a little bit. On Mindful Mending, I like to kind of create a community and share inspiration. I'm a graphic designer by trade, so I really appreciate Fashion Revolution's infographics and sharing tutorials, kind of empowering people to learn the skills to make their clothes last longer and to reduce fashion waste.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Liz Ricketts, are you with us? You're on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm Branson, Liz's partner.
We're the co-founders of the OR Foundation. And, you know, our work is really focused on the reverse supply chain and what happens to things we don't need them, and specifically looking at the secondhand clothing market in Ghana. So trying to understand what transparency looks like on that side of the supply chain as well. And we're really grateful to be here, and also really grateful to Fashion Revolution for including a question on behalf of one of our partners in Ghana for a question time. It was really awesome to see that highlighted. And Solomon Noy, Director of Waste Management there, was also very excited to see that discussed. I am working on a t-shirt. Branson, he did a farm training program at Rodale Institute, and basically came back with all of the clothes having a bunch of holes and covered in mud. So I first over dyed it so the mud wasn't as visible, and then actually used a lot of foreign clothing to teach my students how to mend. So some of you know, what I'm doing right now is just reinforcing the sort of holes and things that they were working on, so that he can keep wearing it.
Which I do all the time. It's one of my favorite shirts. And I'm over here working on a pair of jeans that, you know, I split the crotch on also whilst farming, which really gives clothes a good beating. And Liz's students had previously patched another jeans of mine with, you know, very bright pink patches, which is wonderful. But I've gone a slightly less obvious route of more blue indigo colors, so you know it sort of blends in a little bit more, but still is like a very like rough finish to it, which I kind of like, and is a neat way where it's still visible mending, but it's you know, less overt and sort of more subtle touch. So
Cool. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Rudo, are you with us? And could you remember to say where you are as well? Liz, where are you guys? Did you say?
We're in New York, in central New York.
Yeah.
Okay.
In upstate, yeah.
Thank you. Rudo, are you with us?
Hi, I'm Rudo. I'm the country coordinator for Fashion Revolution Zimbabwe. So I'm in Zimbabwe at the moment, currently on lockdown. This year's Fashion Revolution Week for Zimbabwe and our collaborators was absolutely amazing. And, you know, we actually ended up seeing the benefits in what we were like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen now that we've shut down, because they had a vital message, which was fashion therapy. Also delved a lot into inclusivity, and we, you know, just delved a lot into meditation, which is something that I think is very important in this time that we're living in. So why I'm saying that, you know, it's something that ended up working out for good for us is that we ended up reaching many, many more people than we actually would have if we had had the offline sessions. So we all learned a lot. I learned a lot. And, you know, just now going to start absorbing everything now that, you know, the waters have kind of calmed again. So as of next week, I still have my piece of work from the meditation session that I'll be working on as of next week. Today, I've bought some jeans. So funny enough, I live in jeans, basically. I work in jeans. I do everything in jeans. And at the beginning of our lockdown, all my denim just started like ripping in the most awkward places. So I've bought some jeans with me. I've just finished mending the one. Now I'm on this one, which has like this waistband. And I was also very naughty because I'd kind of, you know, when something ripped, I'd kind of just put it in the laundry basket and hope my mom would come across it when she was like ironing. But we're locked down in different places. So here we are with a lot of jeans to mend. So yeah, so that's basically me.
Thanks, Ruth. Thanks for joining. Ruth, are you with us?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. So my name's Ruth. I'm in Edinburgh in Scotland, and I'm an ethical fashion writer, blogger, kind of content creator type person. And I'm also sort of copywriter for ethical fashion brands. And then alongside that, I've been part of the Fashion Revolution Scotland team for a few years now. And we found very much the same as Rudo was just saying, that we've reached a lot more people than we usually would just hosting events in Edinburgh or Glasgow, but people in rural areas of Scotland who wouldn't usually be able to make it down for these events. So it has been a real positive for us to see, you know, hundreds of people be able to join us. And yeah, I've really enjoyed this week. I think we've been sort of reflecting in a lot of the panels and the talks about what kind of fashion industry we want to see emerge from this. And I hosted an event myself about the manifesto, the Fashion Revolution manifesto, and it sort of brought up some really interesting points about what we can be doing now to ensure that after this crisis, you know, we don't just revert back to business as usual. That's been really interesting. And I am mending the hem on these linen trousers, which are from Kings of Indigo. I'm not very good hand sewer, but I've been trying to get my hands on a sewing machine, and they're all sold out because everyone's investing in mending at the moment. So yeah, it's really nice to be here. It's made me think of the Stitch and Bitch at London Fashion Week. Feels like so long ago in such a different circumstance. But it's really nice to be here with all of you.
Brilliant. Thank you, sorry, Ruth. And going next to Shannon, are you with us? Are you ready to say hi?
I sure am. Hi, everyone. I am coming to you from the suburbs of Washington, D.C., but I'm actually based in Brooklyn, New York. I am the Northeast Regional Coordinator for the U.S., so we're all broken out into different regions. So we have someone in New England, Florida, Texas, Minneapolis, LA, San Francisco, so we're all spread out. So I think something that has actually been quite wonderful doing a digital fashion revolution is that we've been working a lot more closely with the other regional coordinators, coming together to plan all of our digital events. So that's been like really, really great to get a lot more FaceTime, a lot more Zoom time. Everyone like out in LA and in Minneapolis. Ashley and Nicholas have been incredible. So being able to work with them in a more unified way has actually been quite great. So that is something that I'm very grateful for during this digital week. And we're actually already starting to plan more digital events in the next few months because I think it's a great way as everyone has noted, to engage with different people outside of your immediate geographical location. So as I said, I right before the pandemic got really, really bad, I escaped New York City to stay with my brother. So I only brought a few things with me, but I brought one of like my favorite vintage sweater that I bought from a store a couple years ago. It's handmade in Ireland, made of pure wool. So I'm actually just sitting here trying to get all the little lint balls off of it. I don't have my sewing kit or anything like that, but I realize that it's going to be a long, never-ending process because I keep finding more. And I'm very impressed with everyone who's doing all the hand embroidery and everything. That's something I've never been able to do, but would love to try. And thank you again for having me.
Great, thanks, Shannon. So nice that you're with us. Timo, are you with us? Are you ready to speak?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on this. Thank you, Ursula, for the invitation. I'm Timo Rissen, and I'm Associate Professor of Fashion Design and Sustainability at Parsons here in New York. So I'm in Queens, New York, and 6.5 weeks into lockdown. And it's been I mean, just being in New York, I'm sure many of you have seen the news. It's not been an easy city to be in. And so somebody said about embroidery. I couldn't actually do anything until about a week ago when I started working on this piece a week ago. And I fully agree that, you know, hand embroidery has an amazing healing power. And because for me, the thing that's been really difficult to live with over the last month is the sirens. They have been more or less never ending up until about a week ago. It's now to where I live, maybe on average once an hour, but it was like every 10, 15 minutes before for several weeks. And so it's really lovely to also be able to come together even though I don't know most of you personally, but it's really lovely to come together in this way. So thank you again. I'm working on not a garment, I'm actually working on an artwork that's from a series called Precarious Birds, which is dealing with the catastrophic loss of biodiversity and really the grief that I feel as part of that. And my collaborator is Zoe Sadokieski, who's in Australia. She's an illustrator and also working on this project, which for me, this is very much connected to the systems of injustice that Fashion Revolution also addresses. The ecological crisis and the humanitarian crisis, they're inseparable. And so today I'm working on birds, but the t-shirt that I'm wearing, I've been working on it since 2001. So it's like a 19-year-old work in progress, might be older than some of you. And also I lost the button on my pants just before I got on, so I'll be repairing that probably after this call. But yeah, thanks again, and it's really lovely to see you all.
Can we see the artwork that you're doing?
Yeah. So the piece itself doesn't look like much. It's counted cross stitch, but it's the chart that I'm following is that. So the pink areas are what I've stitched so far, and it's a species of bird called the Laysan duck, which is from Laysan Island in Hawaii, and it's one of the species in the project that's actually doing okay. Except for the fact that over the next century, sea level rise due to climate change will actually inundate almost all of its habitat. So even though it's doing okay right now, the future outlook for the species is not great. And so eventually when this is finished, probably in about a year from now, it will have a mother duck and a few ducklings and a poem that I wrote about the species. So the project is at precariousbirds.net, and if anyone wants to check it out. But yeah, thanks again for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. Such a lovely project, and yeah, thanks for sharing. Neve, are you with us? Do you want to say anything?
I am, yeah. I am working on something that I made in the Therapy of Fashion, one of the Zimbabwe Fashion Open Studios. So I'm putting a border on a piece of that so I can send it to Harare, and it can join up with all of the other pieces that are made, hopefully not just in Fashion Revolution Week, but people watching back the video and sending what they've made to Dania. And yeah, I suppose for me, Joss, you probably feel similar, because Joss and I work with the global network, or the global teams. That I was saying to the team that it's kind of like being on Fashion Revolution pirate radio all week, because I get up in the morning, my first thing that I did on Monday morning was I tuned into Mel, talking to Kat, who's our country coordinator in Australia, talking to Claire Press live, and obviously Australian evening was my morning, and then it's pretty much been non-stop, sometimes on 2 devices as well. So kind of switching between and you know, wanting to show the teams that we're show solidarity with them, because they've all made like amazing like resilient changes to what they had planned, because our teams obviously work to plan amazing offline events, and then they've brought them all online, or rethought around the message that they were trying to convey. So, you know, there was a point on Friday with Marina and Matteo and the team in Italy where I was almost convinced that I could understand Italian. But yeah, it's been just amazing for me as my first Fashion Revolution Week within the team. I mean, I've been a fashion revolutionary for some time in my former life, but yeah, it's been incredible to just see that kind of yeah, strength and resilience and resolve, because I think, you know, as Ursula wrote in her Voice of Fashion piece, we're going to need that resolve in the months to come. So yeah, I think the other thing I've really enjoyed seeing, because I'm from a curatorial background originally, so trained in fashion curation, is to see the Loved Clothes Last stories. And some of them have been really emotional, I think, and have reminded us about our emotional connection, our narrative connection, our psychological connection with clothes. So yeah, I've had a couple of teary moments as well. One where I was watching one of the Fashion Open Studio films that was made by the Iran team with a designer called Asadeh Yasaman, and it was like holy. She works with weavers, and watching that film and the way it was shot and the way that they talked about their work was kind of quite spiritual. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, I hope that what we can do with this kind of sewing circle format as well is bring it into our everyday interactions as a network.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Eve. And yeah, I think maybe we forgot to warn you that Fashion Revolution Week always makes you cry, because there's just so many, always so many incredible moments. I'll never forget the first when we were, there was about, I think probably only about 6 of us just huddled around our laptops in the Fair Trade Foundation in offices in London, just kind of weeping at the amazing things that were coming in. And yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, having worked with the global network in particular over the last 7 years, there's just there's nothing like it, basically. So thank you, everyone, and everyone is a part of that, whether you're a country coordinator or not, if you've been participating in any way. Gosh, so many lovely themes coming out. The things that just really kind of sort of stood out for me with that round, thanks everyone for sharing, with these kind of really ideas around handcraft and embroidery in particular. It sounds like Fashion Revolution Week 2020 was basically embroidered by everyone who's at home, but then there's this sort of juxtaposition of all this kind of return to craft, and yet we are doing it through technology, and that's quite, I'm finding that quite a strange experience, I suppose. And I feel like, for me personally, on the one hand it's amazing, but on the other hand it's actually heightening my anxieties. So I'm with you all in, you know, this does alleviate, but for me, it's this the sense of purpose. And I think Karishma, what you were saying earlier about clothes having purpose and function and being made very specifically with emotional purpose as well is really great, and that's something that we're all sort of maybe rediscovering, which we've lost. I don't know if next I was gonna just go back to some of the country teams. Rudo, I absolutely loved the fashion therapy and the meditation session. Could you tell us a little bit more about how that worked and what that was like? Because it sounds like that's something that would be interesting for maybe other people to try and replicate somehow.
Yes, most definitely. So how it came about was initially when we were chatting about, the sort of session we wanted. We had a curating session with the members, and then Danai said, she shared a personal story about how she was in a session with Tendai Angela, and then she just opened up. And she was like, okay, you guys need to meet this lady for you guys to understand what I mean. So we invited Tendai to the next session, and Tendai came in, and then the first thing she did was she read that poem on work, which left us all in tears. And we're like, okay, we need to do more of this. And through that, we then just started seeing how best to merge the two worlds, where there's the therapy in hand making, and then there was also, the therapy in taking time to meditate and to breathe. So for us, we were still basically going about our lives as usual. And then everything just started going wild with COVID and the world. And Tendai kept saying, guys, you need to basically align, like everybody just sit and realign. At which point we then started finding how therapy, so meditation and yoga, as well as hand sewing, can actually help you calm down. So that's basically how we all came up with that session. Then Danai then started talking about love. And again, in one of the sessions we then started talking about roses. And then Tendai had bought rose oil. And we're like, okay, this is exactly how we're going with this. So basically, it's a session that was evolving as we were working on it. It was initially going to be offline. And then we all went into lockdown in different places in the city, and then just found a way to merge it whereby Tendai took charge of what she's really good at, which is meditation. Then I also then started unfolding to be an amazing teacher. So it's one of those sessions where walking out of it, I feel everybody learned something. But more so now we're adopting all of those techniques. So I've done my rose petals twice. I did them first when we were doing a trial run, and then I just couldn't have enough. So, when we were doing the live, I sat down again. I was like, I need to do this again. But it's definitely a calming experience, which very, very easy to adapt. And I would say it's one of those where you literally just need to align. And you just go as you feel. We changed it a couple of times as we were moving, but the way the ladies delivered it is basically how they were feeling, and they were both working from their heart and from their center. So that is why you ended up seeing what you saw. It was true form and true work.
Sounds so incredible, and it sounds like it's also kind of related to this this thing that's coming up for a lot of us, I think, is this kind of return to craft and clothing as a part of life, as a part of practice, a part of everyday kind of ceremony that we've lost somehow. It's really making me think about the luxury that those of us on this call right here have today, sitting here and using sewing as something that's soothing and something that's calming. But it's making me think about all of the millions of women in particular around the world who are sewing our clothing every day and in extremely different circumstances, which are very, very far from soothing or, you know, calming. And I'm wondering about, you know, how, whether they themselves are also returning to sewing. Hello?
Hi there. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering whether they're also returning to sewing in the same way, whether it's something that they're turning to at this time as well. And I just wondered, Salome, you had talked about work some of the kind of these themes maybe more towards labour practices and labour rights. Was that in Portugal that you were doing that in particular? You know, what do you think about in terms of, you know, sewing as a commercial practice rather than a domestic practice? I mean, people can go ahead, please, and raise your hands now as well. It's kind of, let's open it up for.
Yeah, Joss, I was just going to say that Ursula also has her hand up just now.
Yeah, go ahead. So Ursula.
Just something that is, as I went on my walk today and realized how many businesses, how many small businesses, particular. I mean, you know, I'm in South London, and you know, tiny businesses such as restaurants and, you know, other, you know, what we would call experiences have closed. And I see this in a way as an opportunity. I mean, I'm not super positive about what will happen as soon as we're out of this crisis. I do believe that history teaches us that after repression and restrictions, we go back to excess. But at the same time, I think that in this kind of journey towards slowly getting back together, and experiences and restaurants and these types of places still really suffering, there is an opportunity also for clothes makers, because suddenly clothes will be that experience. And more than ever now, we need to make each stitch a story, because if we can convey the importance of these clothes to the people that buy them, we will start also redressing the balance between what's cheap and what's expensive, and find kind of, well, creative ways of buying, but also the understanding that, you know, a stitch, much loved, is an experience in itself. So I'm just saying this because my highlight of Fashion Revolution Week, I mean, there were several, obviously, Fashion Question Time and so on, but seeing and being catapulted all over the world via Fashion Open Studio really changed my genuine understanding of even mine. I mean, you know, even for someone who's been in this industry for such a long time, of the nuance details that we never really get to see. And I find this has left me the most positive for these young designers such as Phoebe. I mean, Phoebe's still here. Phoebe and Holly, the Emergency Designer Network, getting together to sew scrubs. We're seeing this huge positivity precisely from these young businesses that are under so much threat. And so I hope that this will, all of us talking about these things will provide also for them the support that they will need. That was my thought.
Cool. Thank you, Ursula. Has anyone else got their hand up or want to say anything?
Yeah, we have Rudo.
Yeah, Barbara. Yeah.
Hi, just based on what you were saying, what's been so pivotal for us as well has been community. So, when we used to look at clothes, we'd be like, yeah, we're making clothes and you look pretty. But what I missed out of making clothes, even for clients, was that conversation where, for like 10 minutes in your day, you'd be able to just take some time out, if it's a counseling session, if it's a cup of tea, and you find, that there's that sense of community that actually comes out of clothes making as well, which we had all lost because we were used to the hustle and bustle. But I feel just being all centered again makes you realize that when it is time to go out, when it is time to meet your clients, as Ursula was saying, every stitch has a story. And a lot of what we were designing and what we were making was playing into that story and into that setting that we all work in, where you literally sit, and if you're unpicking, you're unpicking, if you're sewing, you're sewing, if you're pattern making, but there's just so much conversation and community. So that is definitely a takeaway and something to really implement going forward as well, acknowledging our community and just the love that we put into the work we do.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, two things. One that I didn't say at the beginning is that for me, what I take from this Fashion Revolution week of amazing events and talks is how inspired I am from the young generation, young designers, truly inspired. And I feel so lucky that this community is so huge and so amazing. And the second thing is that everybody talked about the healing power of craft. And I just want to say that working with, craft project with refugees, prisoners, people in drug rehab communities that use craft to heal, for them is really keeping them alive, okay? Overcome shocks, overcome incredible things. And these have been witnessing that during the years. And so just a thought, but this lockdown period has been terrible for all of us. But imagine for those people who use craft and embroidery and weaving as a really something that keeps them alive, okay? So now we, because there are a few projects here in Italy that of course are in trouble now, big trouble, because there is no work and there was lockdown and everybody was home, and being home for those people is a tragedy. So we created a network of social cooperative, maybe this is nice to share, to produce certified masks, which is what is needed now and what is not available, and to keep them moving and to keep them, surviving, because at the moment, really, the actual situation is really tragic for social cooperatives, small business. But I'm aware, like Ursula said, that after this moment, really, a lot of things will go back to the made in, the locally made, small production, and even the luxury industry will start to relocate in Europe, in Italy, and using artisans and craft people, and so it's going to be good. But at the moment we are facing a problematic situation.
Yeah. Thank you, Barbara. I think it's really great. I think it's lovely to hear from you around this, how you've managed to kind of bring those two things together, the therapeutic aspects as well as, a commercial concern as well. And I think that's really, really heartening to see. And it's just, yeah, the reality of the, so many millions and thousands of people facing from the mainstream production megalith that we've created. Like, how do we kind of support those people going back into it or not going back into it, to find their way through this.
Yeah, basically they're all artisans, no? They're all amazing artisans all over the world, and that's what we have to cherish, whatever is their backgrounds.
But can we do that, and when we're basically doing that for women or men or people behind a sewing machine for a huge commercial factory, are we asking them to work in that way? And yes, we want to recognize them, we want them to be paid fairly and all of that thing, but just payment alone, is that enough compensation, or should we actually be asking for more in terms of the practice and the activity of making clothes?
So I think we had some more hands, first from Hasna and then from Ruth.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a point about going back to crafts whenever there is a crisis. I remember when I was really young, I grew up in the same house as my grandmother, and something she really wanted us to do, everyone, not just the girls, but also the boys in the house, is to know everything, as if we needed to survive in the toughest environment. And this, she was really doing that, and she would ask us to know how to do everything, from spinning the wool, brushing the wool, cleaning it, dyeing it, or even the yarn, and basically everything from scratch. And also embroidery, knitting, and she felt really strongly around the fact that these values will accompany us wherever we go and whatever we do in our future lives, whether it's a corporate job or a startup or working for someone. We needed those skills in case we needed to survive and be autonomous. And this crisis showed that not only the healing power of the crafts, but showed that every crisis, even after the war, people relied on their own craft and own sewing skills to build clothes from waste. I've heard that in France sometimes the parachute, they would sew clothes from them. So whatever, nothing is really waste until we think that is waste. And I feel like we are coming back to this mentality. It's somehow anchored in our DNA or something, because our first instinct is to go back to using our hands, to reconnecting with tangible things. It feels like, again, as a survival instinct that's coming to us. And for the manufacturing ladies, what I want to also to highlight is actually I come from Tunisia, and when I was 23, I was commissioned to write a book. So it was a book to analyze the economics of the country, the financial state, and the objective was to help French companies invest in Tunisia. And in Tunisia, a majority of the economy rely on manufacturing. And so I got the chance to deep dive in that. And also I got a chance to see how the politics around manufacturing was. And the brands are just surfing on the fact that the government and the laws enable these conditions. And we also somehow need to remind the governments that they need to take responsibility for their people, and not have laws that just for the quick cash that they can have on the short run, but think on the long term for the people working in the manufacturing industries.
Thank you. I know that there's people with their hands up. Rudo, or Bronwyn, are you?
Yeah, Rudo, I'm not sure if your hand's up from before or anything. And then I know that Ruth, you had a physical hand up as well.
I just wanted to maybe, I don't mean to change the subject, but we're talking about craft and how we're kind of reconnecting with using our hands in this crisis. But I think it's also about how we're wearing our clothes and like our relationship as consumers and as citizens with our clothes. We had an event in the Scotland team about mindfulness in the way we get dressed in the morning. And that was so interesting and something that we'd never really talked about. You know, people talk about having wardrobe clear out and Marie Kondo folding and things like that, but it was actually just how often do we think about the clothes that touch our skin and how we get dressed in the morning and how we maybe chuck a jumper on a chair in the corner or something like that. And it was really interesting because I think we're all sitting at home and maybe not really getting dressed in the morning so much, and it's this chance of reflecting on our own like psychological connection with our clothes. And I think you guys were maybe talking about it being quite emotional this week. I think I've definitely been feeling that as well, how how clothing has played a part in our lives, and that side of things, as well as the physical making. I don't know if anyone has felt a similar kind of connection.
Yeah, I definitely have. I mean, I just keep coming back to these. What's just becoming so apparent for me is this the distance that we've gone down this kind of commercial path, and how far we've gone down it. I mean, Liz and I had a call yesterday, and we were talking about what you've just mentioned, Hasna, around policies, and it's obviously something that we work on with Fashion Revolution, and how why is it, and how is it that our governments, that we can, how can we communicate better with them to provide us with better policies, not just for ourselves, not just for our workers, but for everyone, and the sort of interconnected global fashion industry. Is there anyone else who's...
Yeah, I do. Actually, I want to pick up on this last point because I think it's incredibly important. So first of all, in Italy and in Europe, there had to be a change in the way that waste is described, because something that is described as waste needs to be disposed of. So to describe fashion and textile waste as waste in a way prevents us from actually reusing it up at scale. And I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of the legislation, but that is policy. These are the types that we will have to make when it comes to really looking at waste as a resource and using it. I mean, I feel that in terms of the way that we will be at the end of COVID, of course, the fact that we will need to demand that garment workers can unionize and can be protected, that's going to be paramount for all industries. But at the same time, also looking at new jobs that can be created by, the tragedies in a way that have happened. And waste is one of them. I mean, if we were to really see it as a resource, we can see a more industrial approach towards really encouraging not just the recycling, the chemical and the mechanical recycling, but the upscalable opportunities that are around the actual waste, the bulk of wastes that we'll have in warehouses, because that does also mean new skills. If garment workers were also taught how to disassemble clothing in order to remake them, if we introduced upcycling facilities within the smaller factories that can deal with sort of smaller systems that are creative, connected to the hyper industrialized. And I think that this is I am loath to use the word opportunity when so many people are suffering, and I so much prefer using the word obligation, because this is an industry that has been over consuming, and there is an obligation to become efficient with the materials that we produce and really teach a whole new generation how to recuperate them.
Brilliant. I think that's just to go again back to this idea of waste being the legalities around waste, because this is something that, Liz, maybe it'd be great to hear from you about, because the problem is right now is that it's not fine, everything's mixed together, and so waste is just being dumped. And it's great if we name it, but we also have to then take responsibility for the stuff that is actually rubbish, some in a very different way than we are now. And there's a whole kind of process of grading and sorting and all of that stuff that's just not happening. I don't know, Liz, if you're there still, or if you feel like speaking, but I find
Sure. Thanks, Jess. Yeah, I mean, just for a little background, basically we researched the largest secondhand clothing market in Ghana, where there's 15 million garments a week, and 40% of them leave the market as waste, which is quite a lot. And, for us, I think it's definitely this idea of looking at waste as a resource, but also what does it mean if waste becomes the new frontier? And how do we make sure that the policies and the innovations are equitable, in the sense of the global South has carried the burden of this waste for decades, and their environment has disproportionately been impacted. So if we develop these strategies around upcycling or recycling technology or, the quote unquote circular economy, how do we ensure that that isn't something that consolidates power further in the global north? And it's something where people in the global south that have been most impacted historically can benefit from and lead also, because they have a lot to teach us in terms of their upcycling and practices around mending. The market is incredible because it's not just a mall, it's also a mini factory. Designers go there and upcycle things all the time. There's sections of dyers, there's sections of menders, even just ironing and steaming things is a craft there in the market. And their ability to preserve billions of garments every year for us as a global community is really not acknowledged in the way that it should be. And I think, something that we're also just seeing is as we tighten regulations in the global north and as we decide, on a municipal level to go zero waste, whatever that means, by 2030, ultimately what we end up doing is actually just creating more of an outlet for the global south. So, if we tighten regulations in Germany, for instance, around how much waste can go to landfill versus being incinerated, it forces those companies that are collecting the clothing to basically export more of it because legally they can't incinerate it or landfill it. So I think it's just about being really cautious and involving people from these countries that have been most impacted in developing these policies.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Liz. I think it's really important to hear that side of it, and for us all to be those people who those like advocating for this, to be really conscious of what the implications are and how and like the beginning of this call, we were talking about systems change, and that is the kind of level. Bronwyn, has people got hands up?
I want a few hands going on. So we have Lily and then Rachel and then Karishma. I know I saw you put your hand up on the screen as well.
So do you want to make points, and then maybe Karishma, you could lead us in a round of kind of quick fire tips, because we're running out of time, I think. So it'd be good then to go into a round of just anyone who wants to kind of leave a parting shot. Please go ahead. Go ahead. Is it Lily?
Hi. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I wanted to talk a little bit about mending kind of on a more personal level. And during these times, I think a lot of people have previously thought about mending as kind of something that is done in times of scarcity, something that's kind of Depression era, like the adage, make do and mend. So I think right now people are experiencing scarcity for the first time, whether that is, not being able to go out shopping as much, not having access to masks, financial issues. So I think that it's a good time for people to really start to understand or change their mindsets about how they value their possessions a little bit more. And I believe that mending and learning to mend, the act itself, actually helps people value their clothes more, because you start to realize the labor and the effort that goes into making clothes. So I'm really happy that not happy, but I feel like people right now are more interested in taking the time to learn these things. I've seen a lot of people reach out and want more tutorials and want to learn how to sew right now because they have the time to do it. So I think that's really wonderful. And I'm hoping that that can have a longer term effect when people start to learn how to take care of their clothes, and going out of this, maybe change their consuming habits a little bit, because we're experiencing something different right now.
So maybe like this sort of, we're rebalancing our lives by being a little bit slightly more kind of, this new level of kind of scarcity that's entering our lives is actually maybe a natural balance that we've needed to bring this kind of sense of calm and this sense of sort of therapy and all these different practices that are sort of age old parts of so many cultures and so all of our kind of backgrounds and our lives they've been lost.
First family have
Thanks.
access.
Thank you. Who
And then
else?
for the other hand that was up.
Rachel?
Oh, you're on mute currently.
Oh, Rachel, you're on mute. Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
now, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Well, maybe actually this is kind of the parting words that you were talking about. But I just wanted to say how, well, it's a real honour actually to be in the Stitch and Bitch and hear all your observations of the week. And in terms of the community, I suppose, yeah, if anyone would like to contribute to this quilt idea, it's called quarantine_quilt on Instagram, and it would be really nice to carry on kind of learning from you all, because actually you've said really, really wonderful and interesting things, so thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks so much for what you're doing, and yeah, exciting. We'll definitely be looking into that. Corinne, no, go ahead with what you were say and lead us, and anyone else who feels like you want to take a part and make a parting comment, then just raise your hand and Bronwyn will come around and make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak.
Yeah, so really quickly, I just like to say that, so I come from India, and India is all about this, and we've always been about this. You know, we are really lucky that we have accessibility to craftspeople, and you go about 100 kilometers and you reach a space where people are making the most beautiful textiles. And I feel like we as a culture have always had this obsession with heirlooms. And what tends to happen like that is that we end up, like, I think it's very inherent to us that we actually keep saving, and we keep, we'll always keep things for our grandchildren who aren't even born as yet. So that, we have this, and I think it happens all across the globe. We're constantly like, my mother will say that I will give this to your son's wife, and my son is only 4. And I'm like, what is the concept behind it? But I understand that it's about emotion, it's about value. And somewhere or the other, we always had that in clothing. We have textiles and saris that belong to our grandparents that have lasted for 50 years. And clearly that also comes to the point of quality, because quality was a huge part to actually ensuring that something was going to live that long. And I don't know if I'm just beating around the bush, and I know everyone already knows this already, but I feel like it's this time that people like us, we always have these conversations because we understand it. We see the value in it. Somewhere in India, I feel like they've lost the value because it's so easily available. But I also feel like with education, we can actually change it. And that is something that I took away really strongly from the last 1 week. This is something I wanted to do for a very long time. Open up the studio, make our artisans meet other people, have conversations. We sometimes see something so much that we think it's not a skill anymore. We see embroidery all the time. We see like chain stitches all the time. So you don't realize how much value that has for other people. And just the last week, the interactions, hearing people say that it's so exciting to see someone work like this. Like, I see it every single day. So sometimes you don't realize what you have till you don't hear it from someone else. And I feel like that is a huge takeaway for us. And if anyone has any more ideas on how we can actually get this out, how can we talk more about it? How do you educate people about a word that has been used so much, like sustainability, that suddenly it's so funny, right? Because suddenly it's become, the it word, suddenly it's become this huge trend. And somewhere or the other, I have started to like have an issue with the word, because I feel like it doesn't justify entirely everything that we do. I think like it's all about being conscious. It's about having values, about having morals, about reaching out to one another, about helping each other. And people end up assuming that if you're sustainable means organic fabric is the only way to be sustainable. So how do you get this out to people that there are so many ways that we can actually bring that aspect of being conscious and sustainable to our brands, to the work that we do, that we can change that perception. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's just something that I keep wondering, that how do you explain to people that sustainability is not just one aspect, like it's everything. It's about how we treat our people, how we speak with each other, how we source our products, how we make our products, how our products die tomorrow, how long will they last in the wardrobe. So it's just this lot of things that I feel like we want help with, even as a brand, to actually get out to people now.
Yeah,
that's all I have to say.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I agree. This word is become such a huge dilemma in so many ways. I think a lot of people, I'm finding myself turning to Indigenous culture a lot, which embodies sustainability in so many ways. And I feel like a lot of us turning back to Indigenous culture, either our own or other people's, and I think we have a lot to learn in that. In those practices, and a lot of that is what's kind of coming through in this conversation as well. So I think instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, for me, I find myself definitely turning to the wisdom of the ages. Is there anyone else who wants to?
We have 3 more, and maybe that's a good point to close. So first we have Rudo, and then Hasna, and then Neve.
Okay, so interesting about the word sustainability. One of our collaborations was with a circus troupe, and all the children in the troupe are hearing impaired. And, when we went in and we're asking them, what do like, how do you say sustainability? We then realized that there was no word for sustainability in Zimbabwean sign. And then we asked the next question, which was, how would you interpret it? And the interpretations that came out were things like life. Interpretations were, when we asked, like, what do you think of when you hear the word sustainability? People would say things like greenery. So we then realized that that is a whole new interpretation as well, one that we had never really thought of, because, like you're saying, sustainability is like, oh, it's organic, or it's, it comes through this way. But there are other ways of looking at it, and how we can go about and educate people around sustainability is actually ask them how to interpret it for themselves. And then through that, you can then actually start the conversation as well, and then hone in on what they see sustainability embodying in their lives and in their circumstance.
Yeah, brilliant. Maybe after you've had this, Carrie, it's just making me think of, some of the work and research that you've been doing, and a piece that you wrote recently. So I don't know if you've got any comments around this, but if you do, please jump in. But otherwise,
no, Carrie's left because she had another.
Oh, okay. She wrote a great
It's live
blog
with Fashion Revolution Mexico at the moment, so tune into that after.
Cool. Go ahead.
Hasna, do you want to go?
Yeah, I just wanted to also add around the sustainability overuse of overusage of the word sustainability, and people tend to associate it to ethics, to organic, but actually the way I feel about sustainability is how to manage resources in a responsible way, not only for the current generation, but the future generations. And this is only when you approach resources in a way that are thinking about future generations that can also benefit from those resources, finite resources often. That's when it's truly sustainable. If you are extensively using oil, organic cotton, or whatever wool, and it damages the environment or the ecosystem, that's even though your usage of water for example, is as low as possible, and it doesn't take into account the future generations and their livelihood, that's when it can't be sustainable, and that's when it threatens the livelihood of our children and the ones that are coming after. And I feel like brands are, when they use the word sustainable, they just point that it's a new way of doing, and greenwashing is something that people can easily fall into, and thinking, oh, this is sustainable because there is ethic, because there are paying their employees higher than the other, but actually when you look into more in depth, you can see that it's not sustainable, and it's not thinking of resource management, and not taking into account innovation or progress, technical progress that could limit the way you use resources. So this is the point I wanted to raise.
Thank you. I think, you know, those of us who have, most of us on this call, we've been grappling with these words for, 20 years now. First it was eco, then it was responsible, now it's responsible. But the reality is that, we're trying to apply these words to a system that is that. And so it's always going to be a problem when we're trying to apply words that mean one thing to a system that does something else. So that's what we all need to be in our use of language. We need to be searching for different ways of using language, but also we need to be holding brands to the language that they're using, and calling it out when it's not that. Maybe. Does anyone else have any other things that they'd like to story here? Or
I think it's just Neve.
And I'll go as we've been talking, and in the last few months, the conversations that we've been having within the team and within the network, there's a quote from an architect that always keeps occurring to me. And one of the reasons is a little bit what Carrie was talking about kind of going deeper and asking more questions. And we've been talking about that often. And this architect, it talks about complexity and contradiction. And he says that he's for messy vitality over obvious unity, and he's for richness of meaning rather than clarity of meaning. He prefers both and to either and or. And I think in a way, what Karishma was saying and what some other people have been saying is closely related to this. We have to find a way to sort of encounter that complexity and to untangle that complexity, and seeking sort of simple answers. We're sort of well beyond that point. So yeah, he talks about many levels of meaning, and I think we're starting now to go deeper into those layers of meaning and into that hopefully what will be a messy vitality rather than a complexity and contradiction.
That's brilliant.
Thanks, Neve.
We've totally run out of time.
Yeah, it's just making me think of the Earth Logic call to action to stay with the trouble. And I think, that what we're all doing in our macro and our micro ways. So just what a pleasure to be joined with you all, and to know that we're all connected in this, and that we're all, working on it in so many different ways is really, really exciting. Ursula, I'm going to pass it back to you for the last word.
Okay, amazing. So, I mean, I didn't want to cheat, but I've got a pile of things to mend, and I've not been as purposeful as I thought that I was going to be in lockdown. I've been doing all sorts of things, doodling. Today, what I did was that I actually broke my socks, and I made a ton of hair clips, in case you can see them. I make elastic bands out of broken tights. That was all that I could mend today. I mean, the only thing I feel that needs mending is the bags under my eyes. I'm that tired. But apart from that, it's been amazing. It's been a really brilliant Fashion Revolution week. As for today, I think I would like to close with two things that are really strong from this conversation. First of all, going back to what Liz was saying around the fact that it's always the global South that bears the brunt of our excesses, and in many ways this is why I like the concept of reusing and recuperating, because it is autochthonous to mankind. There is no culture that does it better, but we all do it differently, and we've been doing it for millennia. So if there is one area where the fashion industry can really learn, not from the West as always, but from every single global community, is around the culture of reusing and putting things in circulation and making things last a long time. And that, I think it's important that we remember. And the second one is around mending. Because, here we are all, to a certain extent, the majority of us, or most of us, privileged. We have a roof over our head. We've got the time to mend. But potentially, you know, a single parent, 4 young children, she's not going to be able to sit at home and mend the clothing of her children in order to make them last a long time. So as much as we have to advocate for people learning mending and the wonderful experience that embroidering and making and using our hands charity gives to us as individual, we also have to campaign hard for this to be part of a cultural shift and ensure that all of our councils, our local councils, our cities make mending facilities and, you know, keeping our clothes for a long time really part of all of the communities for those who can't really afford the time to learn how to do it themselves, because it should be available to all, really. And again, I thank you all for joining us today, and I thank you all mostly for staying with us during Fashion Revolution Week. And I can't thank everyone in the global team in the UK and in all of the teams all over the world for being so bloody amazing. Thank you.